Good morning, everybody. Today I'm going to show you how to make hard butterscotch candy. I actually did have a request for this recipe. I did quite a lot of experimenting before I hit this one, and I did make it a few times before I'm shooting this today just to make sure that I could duplicate the results every time. And yes, provided you follow the directions exactly, it will work every time. It's a fairly easy recipe, doesn't take a lot of ingredients, and I'll give you the list in a minute. Now for this you definitely will need a candy thermometer because there's two cooking points here. You're going to be cooking to softball, which is 240 Fahrenheit, and you're going to be cooking around soft crack. The final point on this is 285 Fahrenheit, and no, you can't do that visually. But I'll tell you, if you buy a lot of candy, you're going to end up paying for this pretty quick. Because the net result, I did weigh it, it makes about 1.5 pounds of candy. And as I said, if you look at the ingredient cost, it's not very much at all, except for the thermometer. Now for the other hardware, I do recommend parchment paper. If you don't have it, don't use wax paper, just use a regular non-stick baking sheet, because you will need to cool it off on something. You will have to pry it off if you don't use the parchment. Silicone might work, I haven't tried it. You will need a cutting board to cool it off briefly, and a cleaver to score it with before it breaks when it's finally cool. I have a rack I'm using because I found that really helps. If you don't have a big cooling rack, you can use the cutting board and that works out just fine. Okay, so let's go to the stove and we'll get started. Combine the sugars, water, and the heavy cream in a saucepan. I got a 2.5 quart here. That's the minimum. 3 is probably better. Make sure it's a heavy bottom pan. Do not use a thin one. It will not work well. Okay? So just give that a stir before you start. Turn the heat on to medium. If you have gas, make sure the flame is not turned up too high. You don't want it coming up the sides of the pan and burning the outsides. Okay, the mixture has just come to a boil, and this is where you adjust the heat. Turn it down a little if you have to make sure it doesn't boil over. This is why I'm saying 3/4 is always better than 2.5. 2.5 is possible, but I would not use 2 at all. Now once that's come to a satisfactory simmer, get your candy thermometer. And as you know, my standard precaution for candy, when you're making any kind of candy, you always have to respect the sugar. This is hotter than boiling water, and you should never walk away from this. Make sure there's no pets or small children around. Okay, and as you've noticed, yeah, I've lost the clip on my thermometer, but it's very well trained now, so stay, and it will. I've got one of those flat bottom ones, so that works out quite nice. What I'm going to do now is just let this sit. So for the butter, just score a stick before you open it with a knife. And you don't need a sharp knife for this, any kind of knife will do. So just cut it in the middle. And then what you want to do is you want to take this half that you're going to be using and just slice it in small slices like that. That's good enough. I've turned that up a little now that some of the moisture has boiled off, just so it cooks quicker. Once you know that it's not going to boil over the top of your pan, you can turn the heat up to just accelerate the process, because you don't want to be standing here all day watching the pot boil. Now in the meantime, I'll get the parchment ready for the cookie sheet. And for this I want a piece that's much larger than the sheet. And do fold in the corners, because if you don't fold the corners in, the candy will get considerably thin right at the edges, and it won't all be the same thickness. Now then again, I mean, this is homemade candy, so it's not going to be perfect like the store, but you don't want to lose much either, right? I just read the thermometer at eye level. It just hit 240. So now I'm going to add the butter. Now, one thing that's important to remember when you're making candy, you don't stir it after you start. If you do, you will get fudge, okay? Now, if you want fudge, that's great, but not for this. So just add the pieces. The boiling, add them one at a time, and the boiling of the sugar mixture will cause it to stir by itself. You can drop them in at different spots, wait a little bit between each. Try not to knock your thermometer over. All the butter is in. And as you can see, that's stirring up by itself. That took 11 minutes to come from boil to 240. So now we wait for it to get to 275. At 275, you're going to add the vanilla. I did try it at 280. The temperature goes up really fast at the end, and you have to be ready for it. Do make sure that you've got an oven mitt nearby. Okay, because you're going to need that to pour it onto the prepared pan. It cooks very fast at this point. It just hit 275 and it's passing it rapidly, so I'm going to add the vanilla right now. And just sprinkle that over the top. You'll actually hear it sizzle, but that will mix in by itself in a couple of minutes. That's why you don't want to wait too long, because it will hit 285 pretty quick. And you want the vanilla mixed in before then. It's at 282 right now. Hope I didn't get my head in the shot. Okay, it's just coming up onto 285. I'm just going to move the camera here, and I will do some time lapse on this for you so you can see. Turn it off. Pull out the thermometer. Get that on the side. Get your oven mitt. Grab the pot securely, and in one quick motion, just pour it. Do not bother chasing the stuff in the pan, because like I said, if you touch it at all, you'll create fudge, and you don't want to do that right now. Now, you can tell that it's going to come out perfect by how it is dripping out of the pan right now. Okay? You see all those bubbles? This is where I'm going to do some time lapse. Because if you can see, I'll just zoom in for you. Down here, there's the butterscotch starting to form at the right-hand corner as it cools off. So I'll bring this back out, and we'll see how long it takes for the bubbles to go away. So that was about 2 minutes. So I can move the camera now. And what I do want you to see is the gloss that's forming. Okay, so let me zoom in here so you can get a good shot of the candy. This will turn actually mirror-like as it sets. Now this is still too hot to move. I'm going to give this at least another 5 or 10 minutes. While we're waiting for it to cool off, here's a sneak preview of the finished product. You can see there's the candy thermometer. When I pulled it out, it dripped down and solidified instantly. And if you look at these, you can hear how hard that is. This is what dropped off the thermometer. So this is the consistency of the candy that you're going to get. But feel free to try that while you're waiting, because resist the temptation to touch the other pan. It's way too hot right now. It's been a little over 5 minutes now. And what's important, let me see if I can really get down here so you can see the gleam on that. Now, what I'm looking for here is I'm going to lift the corner up very gently and see how much give there is in the candy. If it's starting to firm up, you can transfer it. If it's still really soft, you should wait. That's firmed up enough. I think I should be able to. Now I'll show you how to do this here. Get your cutting board. Move the camera back a little bit here. Get the cutting board and just lift the edge. There you go. And I'll just move that so you can see it, and just pull the whole mass of the candy onto the board. Pick it up really carefully and move it over to your countertop. So now that I've got it transferred, I started scoring it with the knife. So I forgot to hit record. You got to be pretty quick about this. You want it to break after it's completely cool. And these are the edges I was talking about here. They'll break off pretty easily. So you want to make sure that you do that first. You don't want to be giving out pieces of candy that people are going to cut themselves on. Yeah, this is nearly cold right now. As you can see, some of it just broke off here. If you do have a cooling rack, you can transfer it to it, which I'll just do right now. As you can see, yeah, it's just starting to break on its own. So just get your cleaver under the candy and lift it up a bit to just slide it off. Now, if you've done your scoring correctly, what you can do is just pick it up and it will just start to break like that. I was a little too slow on my scores. If you do it properly the first time, it will break along those lines like that. And you can also just snap it off like this too, into pieces that you want. So there's my hard butterscotch candy. As you can see, it's pretty easy to make. Comes out really good. The only tip I would say is don't wait too long on the scoring if you want really even pieces, but the way this tastes, I don't think anybody's really going to care, eh? So I do hope you try this, and thanks for watching, and I do hope to see you again. Thanks, bye-bye.